everybody. Stewart A. Swerdlow.
And Janet Swerdlow.
For expansions.com, and this is our podcast for the very end of July 2014. Can you believe it's end of July?
And I want to congratulate you on stopping and letting me say my name too, but go ahead.
Yeah, I did that last week, okay?
You did?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Now, don't interrupt me because we do have
Go
limited
ahead.
time.
You're dribbling here.
No, if I was dribbling,
Go
you'd
ahead.
be wet.
Go ahead. I am.
Anyway,
Go ahead.
please ignore her. Anyway, people, I have a lot of stuff to tell you, and I don't know where to begin.
You gotta go.
Yeah, it's about the alternative information about Malaysian Airlines Flight 17, which I spoke to you about last week, didn't I?
Is that AKA conspiracy theory?
Well, this is not a conspiracy theory
No?
because this is a conglomeration of different news sources from the UK, the US, India, and Russia and Ukraine. And it's been pulled together, and I'm going to give you some specifics, and I cannot verify that any of this information is absolutely true, but I'm going to present it to you because of the news that you've been talking about and you've been hearing in the last week or so. So, what I want to say first of all is that in the very beginning, when the flight first was, and it's not a crash, they keep calling it a crash, it was not a crash, it was blown up in the air, but the Russians actually handed over air traffic data from their satellite, which was given to the Ukraine and the EU and the US in the very beginning. And that, of course, was not on Western news. And Malaysian Airlines confirmed that for some unknown reason, the air traffic control in Kiev, which is the capital of Ukraine, ordered Malaysian Airlines 17 off of its original flight path to an international route known as L980, and you can look that up. And this was done while they were still in Polish airspace. Now, according to this information, the air traffic controllers in Kiev moved the airliner 200 miles to the north, putting it on a new course directly into the war zone. Now, Ukraine has a secret service, like their own version of KGB, which is called the SBU. I have no idea what that stands for. But they confiscated the recordings of the conversations between the Ukrainian air traffic controllers and the airliner, and this is according to Interfax news agency. And according to this information, no reason has been given for the confiscation, and Washington has not said a word about it. British news outlets have stated that the airline was diverted to avoid thunderstorms in southern Ukraine, which apparently did not happen. They were not there. And Malaysian Airlines refutes this report. Now, that's the reason I'm bringing that up is because just recently, I'm going to get to this a little bit later, the recent crash of Air Algerie in Africa, they said was also diverted from its course also because of thunderstorms. So that seems to be the cover story of the week.
Were there thunderstorms?
There were thunderstorms in the area, but none of them were considered to be severe or threatening in any way. Now, the Civil Aviation Organization, which is also known as the International Air Transportation Association, said that the airspace the aircraft was traversing in was not subject to restrictions. However, the previous Flight 17s for the prior 10 days to July 17th took a course over eastern Ukraine in a southerly direction, which would have been outside of the war zone area. Now, according to the report, the area, the weather in that area of Ukraine at the time where the flight actually went was cloudy and overcast, and there was visibility above the cloud canopy, and that would have been at that 33,000 feet or 10,000 meters. The airliner would not, and I repeat, would not be visible from the ground because of the cloud cover. And air traffic controllers suddenly ordered the flight to drop from 35,000 feet to 33,000 feet, and no explanation was given for that. Now, bear with me because I'm going through a lot of different pages here of information. I'm trying to get it in order. The Ukrainian military had already isolated the rebel area and insisted that the rebel-controlled terrorists, whatever you want to call them, had these Buk/SAM missile batteries that fired on the passenger jet. However, the territory controlled by these separatists is only 50 miles wide at that point, and the plane, which was flying at 580 miles per hour or 933 kilometers per hour, would have only been visible for a very short period of time, just over a minute. However, in order for these Buk missiles to work, it requires 5 minutes of setting up the target, followed by another 22 seconds of reaction time for target acquisition. And since the flight was only visible for 70 seconds, this would not have been possible. Unless, and I put this in, unless the firing was tracked, the people who fired on this tracked it before it entered into the rebel-held airspace. The other thing is, now this is interesting, just minutes before the flight went down, it made a mysterious left turn as it flew over the Donetsk area, and that was approximately at 5:20 p.m. Moscow time. Moscow is, I think, 1 hour ahead of where Ukraine is. Maybe not, I don't know. They also said the Buk launchers would then moved away from the firing zone on July 18th. However, the Ukrainian military is in possession of 27 Buk missile systems capable of bringing down a high-flying jet, and forensic satellite imagery places at least 3 of their launchers in the Donetsk region on that day that the plane was shot down. Why did the Ukrainian army move these short-range anti-aircraft missiles into position on the 16th and 17th of July in an area where there are no rebel resistance aircraft? Because they don't have planes. The rebels don't have planes. Now, here's another fascinating bit of information. Ukrainian fighter jets appear on radar trailing the Flight 17 at the same altitude, estimated at 4 kilometers behind the plane at 5:21 p.m. In the region, not too far away, was Singapore Airlines Flight 351, which was close enough to have observed anything that happened, and it's interesting.
Did they?
Nobody's saying anything. That's the thing. Now, there was also a Ukrainian jet fighter that appears to climb in the direction of MH17 before trailing behind it. Over the next 4 minutes, the Ukrainian fighter jet remained in the area. The authorities in Kiev have recently returned to service 2 other high-performance fighters, including an Su-27 Flanker and a MiG-29 Fulcrum, which they apparently have been using. The Kiev government officials insisted on July 17th that no military aircraft were available in the region. Based on the available data that I just mentioned to you, that appears to be a lie, and that there is a cover-up taking place. Now, they said that Flight 17 started being diverted 14 kilometers to the left, and that its GPS, or navigation system, was being jammed. U.S. NATO forces happened to be conducting an electronic warfare exercise in the Black Sea, which is right near there, on July 17th. Now, do you remember, was it about a month ago or so, that all those flights went off radar in Austria and Eastern Europe?
Yes, so
because the radar, no explanation, everything. Could they have been testing, taking commercial airliners off of radar because they were plotting this?
It's possible.
This is a smoking gun, people. Another possibility or another explanation is that the event that the flight was hit or damaged, that it made an emergency turn after it was damaged, and then it was shot down. Now, this is interesting because, do you remember on CNN when this happened, they said they need to get the black box because that will determine if the pilot knew the plane was hit. And I said to you, what a ridiculous statement, because if it was blown up by a missile, there was not even a second to know what happened. They would not have known what happened. How could that be recorded? But apparently, that's a bit of evidence that they want to find out. Now, there is a retired Russian Air Force Colonel, Alexander Shilin, who was a frequent military commentator on the Ukrainian Civil War, which I didn't know they were calling the Civil War. Now, I'm going to quote what he said. According to the colonel, at 4:19 local time, or 5:19 Moscow time, a Ukrainian jet fighter targeted the Boeing with an air-to-air missile R-60. The missile damaged the right engine of the Boeing. The Boeing was hit, but still managed to stay in the air. However, in doing so, the Boeing turned 180 degrees to the left. It was at this moment that the false flag attack started falling apart. He's calling it a false flag attack. According to Zhilin, part of the plan controlled by the U.S. with Ukrainian hands executing it was to have the Boeing crash past the southern front lines of the Ukrainian-Russian border. When, however, the Boeing started to turn in the opposite direction and was still apparently manageable, the U.S.-Ukrainian headquarters of the Special Operation panicked and ordered the Buchnest battery to destroy the plane in the air in order to preempt the possibility of the plane having an emergency landing, and then telling everybody what happened. This account, by the way, is consistent with the location of pieces of the wreckage that are scattered over a very wide area. All evidence is pointing to the Ukrainian fighter jet shooting at the airliner, and there is a Spanish air traffic controller who's known as Carlos, who was working in Kiev as an air traffic controller. And according to him, and I quote this, the air traffic controller is a citizen of Spain and was working in the Ukraine. He was taken off duty as a civil air traffic controller along with other foreigners immediately after the airliner was shut down. The air traffic controller suggested in a private evaluation, basing it on military sources in Kiev, that the Ukrainian military was behind this shoot-down. Radar records were immediately confiscated after it became clear a passenger jet was shot down. Military air traffic controllers in internal communication acknowledged the military was involved, and some military chatter said they did not know who or where the order was to shoot down the plane where it came from. According to this Carlos, who Twittered this in real time, his very next hour, his Twitter account disappeared, along with the report. He says that autopsies of the bodies would reveal additional evidence about what really took place. And it's again no coincidence that there was a US-NATO large-scale military intelligence drill in the Black Sea, which is called Sea Breeze 2014. That was the name of the drill. And it's also a coincidence, is it, that the US had an experimental satellite positioned over Eastern Europe for 1 to 2 hours and directly over Donetsk in eastern Ukraine from 5:06 p.m. to 5:21 when the plane was shot down. So it's very telling, isn't it, if all of this is accurate. They also are saying that the Netherlands is considering deploying NATO troops to the middle of this war zone should things escalate and become more bizarre. And this is a quote from Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. He says, and I quote, "No matter what our Western counterparts tell us, we can see what's going on. As it stands, NATO is blatantly building up its forces in Eastern Europe, including the Black Sea and the Baltic areas. Its operational and combat training activities are gaining in scale." So he's well aware. By the way, I mentioned last week that the Russians were the first to provide information to the U.S. Within minutes after this event happened. The U.S. media has two theories, which to me they are conspiracy theories. Theory one is the rebels shot down the plane by mistake, and theory two is Russia is responsible for creating the conditions of this tragedy, even though no evidence actually exists confirming all of that. Now, interestingly enough, I didn't know this, that all of the universal coverage, all the global media networks are owned by 5 U.S. and 2 British corporations. That says a whole lot right there. And it's being compared to the fake imagery from the Syrian government. Remember, they said the Syrian government was firing chemical weapons at their own people, and it turns out that the YouTube videos that showed this were proven to be faked and staged. The gas from the videos was made in Britain, and the chemical attack was actually staged by Syrian insurgents who were supported by the US, UK, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar. Qatar is figuring, this little tiny country in the Gulf is figuring very highly in all of these things. Also about the Syrian war and what's going on in Ukraine is people are saying, or experts are saying, these are proxy wars being conducted by the superpowers on other territories so that they don't damage their own territory. It's known that the Ukrainian military is carrying out attacks on civilian targets all over eastern Ukraine, killing thousands of its own innocent citizens with the full logistical and financial backing of Washington and NATO. And I just read a report on CNN, so it's not like, it was said over 100,000 Ukrainians have fled the country. You know where they went? Russia. If Russia was such a threat, why would they flee to it? It's like when you see the picture of Jackie O, your cousin Jackie O, when she's crawling out the back of the car when Kennedy was shot. Well, if the gunman was in the back, why would she go towards the back? The gunman was in the front. Another story. Now, another thing here going on about the Buk systems, the missile systems that Ukraine says were Russian and were taken back to Russia quickly so that no one would get any evidence. Apparently, a lot of the photos in question were deleted, and it shows that some of the videos that were made to show that were actually taken in wintertime. Had nothing to do with this time of year. And what's also interesting that in Kiev, again the capital of Ukraine, the headquarters of that Kiev security system is in the same building, or the SBU is in the same building as the new CIA station in Ukraine. People, you can't make this up. Of course, there's that audio of the supposed phone calls between the Russian insurgents in Moscow and all these things, and it says the tapes were released by Kiev officials, allegedly to be taken from conversations between pro-Russian separatists and rebel commanders. But the thing is that they did it like 10 minutes after the crash. How could they do that when it takes days or weeks to get those specific audios segmented? And then if they were hearing this and it was legitimate, why did they warn the plane? If they heard this,
none of it makes any sense.
Doesn't make any sense. And according to this information, the tapes that they release contradict each other. And it says that an analysis of the audio shows that the recordings were made at different times and were spliced together. And actually, there were 3 different ones that were all spliced together to create this audio. And it was confirmed, it was confirmed by TASS, which is the Russian agency. It says the tape's second fragment consists of 3 pieces, but was not presented as a single audio recording. However, a spectral and time analysis has shown that the dialogue was cut into pieces and then assembled. Very interesting. And what's also interesting is an audio tape clearly shows that it was created almost a day before the airliner came down. Now, there's this U.S. State Department person named Marie Harf. She's a deputy spokesperson, and she says the U.S. intelligence officials have authenticated the audio. And the commentary here is, yes, they've authenticated that it's fake. Now, here's something from Los Angeles Times, and I quote, U.S. intelligence agencies have so far been unable to determine the nationalities or identities of the crew that launched the missile. U.S. officials said it was possible the anti-aircraft missile was launched by a defector from the Ukrainian military who was trained to use similar missile systems. And an American investigative reporter, Robert Parry, who actually reported on the Iran-Contra scandal and other scandals from the 70s and 80s, this is what he says. What I've been told by one source who has provided accurate information on similar matters in the past is that U.S. intelligence agencies do have detailed satellite images of the likely missile battery that launched the fateful missile. But the battery appears to have been under the control of Ukrainian government troops dressed in what looks like Ukrainian uniforms. Hello. Now, let me tell you something else. Apparently this is not a new idea to shoot down commercial airliners and blame it on somebody else, because the first officially known plan to fake the destruction of civilian aircraft was drafted by the U.S. Pentagon in 1962 when they were trying to frame Cuba. According to this report, justification for U.S. military intervention in Cuba outlined for Secretary of Defense at the time, Robert McNamara, a series of false flag attacks codenamed Operation Northwoods, which said it would be carried out by the United States on various targets but be blamed on Fidel Castro and Cuba. The Northwoods plan called for sinking of a boatload of Cuban refugees en route from Cuba to U.S., blowing up an American ship in Cuban waters, and more importantly, in light of the recent downing, faking a Cuban Air Force attack on a civilian jetliner so that the U.S. would have an excuse to attack Cuba. So people, what's the result of all of this? Well, number one, world opinion against Russia. 2, NATO, EU and US to defend Ukraine. 3, Israel used it as a cover to invade Gaza. 4, the US and the EU are able to apply for more aviation rules and restrictions, more than we have now. 5, it boosts the economies of the US and EU because there'll be a war and manufacturing will increase. And 6, sets the stage for a staged alien invasion. Now, on the other hand, correspondent Barbara Starr, really, she needs new glasses, okay? And a hair, seriously. She needs a makeover. She says that the U.S. intelligence community has information that Russian artillery is firing into eastern Ukraine. Well, that fits into their plan to support a pro-Russian separatist area in eastern Ukraine, and she believes that it's the eventual absorption of that region into the Russian Federation. Well, yes, there is a new Soviet Union forming, and I have reported on that before. I'm so nervous because I'm reading all this stuff. It was like, how to get this together. Now, Putin believes that these rebels are his ticket to gradually acquiring eastern Ukraine without a Russian military invasion. Well, hello, it's because they are Russian.
I was going to say that it's already part of Russia, really.
It's like the U.S. saying, we're going to take over Florida. Well, nobody wants Florida anyway, and it's sinking. There are 15,000 troops deployed along the border, the Russian troops along the border with Ukraine. Now, I'm going to make this statement. I know I'll get flack, but I'm not politically correct, and I really don't care. Ukraine is known for their poor government and fighting in parliament. In fact, just today was a video of another fist fight in Kiev parliament. Okay, they can't even talk to each other in their own parliament, and we're supposed to believe what they say.
Maybe they should come to our communication seminar.
Ukrainian military and thugs are attacking people in the streets. They have corralled, there was a video a couple months ago where they've corralled Russians in eastern Ukraine into a building and set it on fire.
That's
and barricaded it.
terrible.
Yeah, the Ukrainians, I'm sorry, I like pierogies, but what they're doing is wrong.
I thought pierogies were Polish.
Okay, whatever. It's Eastern European. Oh, shit. By the way, we have a live audience today, live West Coast audience. Isn't that exciting?
Well, we've had live audiences before.
Yeah, but these are like really alive.
Wait, actually,
But these are on drugs. They're on drugs.
What about the person who films us? Is that person alive? That's
Well,
like
he's a West Coast audience too, actually.
So yeah, we always have a live audience.
Yeah, okay, back to me. I spoke to friends and my family in Russia, and they are usually very critical of the Russian government, but this time they said that Russia was right and that Ukraine is very bad because it has bad reputation in Russia. Now, I want to go back to Malaysian Airlines. Okay, we know Flight 370 vanished, Flight 17 was shut down. Now, just 2 days, I believe it was just 2 days after this flight was shut down, Malaysian Airlines defends itself after confirming that it diverted a London to Kuala Lumpur flight over Syrian airspace. The Malaysian Airlines said that MH17 flight path was in accordance with routes approved by the United Nations Aviation Agency and the Civil Aviation Organization. And as per the notice to airmen issued by the Syrian Civil Aviation, really? I trust them. The Syrian airspace was not subject to restrictions. That's interesting. And it said at all times MH17 was in the airspace approved by the Civil Aviation. Previous MH17 Airbus, their 380s have flown over Turkey instead of Syria. And according to Flight Trader 24, which monitors all flights everywhere, It said that the Malaysian airline flight flew over war-torn Syria where the conflict was raging, and it was the only transcontinental flight going over Syria. People, I'm sorry, do not fly Malaysian Airlines.
But
Seriously.
after the first time one was lost, I'm surprised anybody would
No,
fly
I mean,
it.
the food is great. I've been on that. I actually have been on the Kuala Lumpur Beijing line. It was very good, but no. Even if they gave me first class, which they won't after this, first class ticket forever, I still wouldn't go. Sorry, Malaysia Airlines. Now, here's another airplane story.
Another
Can
one?
you believe it? Jeez, what's going on? 2 U.S. F-16 fighter jets escorted a plane back to Toronto this past week after a passenger, apparently irate over expensive purchase of cigarettes, I understand that, from an airport duty-free shop threatened the aircraft. His name is Ali Shahi. That sounds like a Canadian name. He's a Canadian. He began ripping apart magazines and the safety card from the pouch of his seat on the Panama City-bound 737. He said it was because he found that it was cheaper to buy them on the plane, the cigarettes, than in the airport. Well, duh, you know. And the flight was over West Virginia when he became belligerent. They had to turn the plane back around. It was escorted by U.S. fighter jets all the way to Toronto. So U.S. fighter planes crossed the border into Canada, A, instead of the Canadians meeting them and saying, okay, thanks, A, we'll take it, you know, A. But they didn't. The U.S. went all the way in there. And then, did you see the video? I think it's going to be a link on this podcast. You know, this van pulls up with all these military people, these poor people on the plane, children, old people with heart issues. They burst into the plane. They scream, heads down, hands up. You know, like, all of them were terrorists. There's this one little mentally ill guy, and they, like, okay, Canada, they don't have too much excitement in Canada. So they go, hey guys, hey, there's a plane coming. Let's go like big. Seriously.
No. I actually agree.
You agree?
I agree.
Well, you go to Canada.
That possibly, that we don't know, and that guy that was making the fuss, he could have been a diversion. They don't know who.
Well, the thing is, the guy's father said his son is troubled and mentally ill. Now, here's what the father says. I blame it on the society here. I guess he means Canada. The health system and the police system. Apparently, the father has called the police on this kid, he says, 23 times in the last 2-3 years, and they've done nothing. Okay? So Canada was way worse than the U.S. in this case. And again, my question, why were U.S. jets, why did they cross the border when Canadian jets could have met them? Maybe they were drinking too much Molson's, maybe they were, eating bacon, I don't know. But whatever reason, the U.S. had to follow the jets all the way there. Now, another Canada story, but this time it's the U.S. issue. A Boy Scout troop, cute little Boy Scouts with the bow ties and the little hat, they're so cute. They were detained by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection when one child was held at gunpoint. Yeah, it was at a checkpoint on the Alaska-Canada border, like who goes there anyway? They were on a drive from Iowa to Alaska. One of the scouts snapped a photograph at the checkpoint. The agent stopped the van, ordered all the passengers to get out, and they told the underage photographer they had committed a federal crime.
Well, we don't know how old the Boy Scout was.
He's a Boy Scout. Boy. He's not a man scout. He's a Boy Scout.
They go up to age 18.
Even so. The agent immediately confiscated his camera and informed he'd be arrested, fined for $10,000 and 10 years in prison. During the search, one of the scouts tried to retrieve a bag from the roof carrier. When he turned around, the agent had a loaded pistol pointed at him. And they said a child. He said it was a child.
Well, anyone 18 and under
technically
is a child.
Okay, I'm talking. The scoutmaster said he tried to watch the agent search the van, but was ordered to return to his vehicle. And the agent followed him and told the youngsters that the next one to leave the van would be handcuffed and detained. That's kind of what you say to me every night.
You like that?
Yeah, okay, I won't talk about that right now. The agent informed the scoutmaster that it was a violation of federal law, did you know this? For any American, I guess Chinese it's okay, American to take a picture of a federal agent or a federal building. Hello, what the frick are you doing in Washington, D.C. when you're on a tour? Why don't they arrest all the tourists in Washington, D.C.?
Maybe they are.
I mean, seriously, what is
Maybe
going
they did,
on?
and it's just not on the news yet.
Honestly. Get this, these are Boy Scouts, right, going on a camping trip. They want to know why the Boy Scouts were hauling excessive amounts of lighters, matches, and knives. Yeah, they were going to attack Alaska. Little Boy Scout terrorists were going to attack big Alaska. And the scoutmasters of the boys were unnecessarily frightened and intimidated with Gestapo tactics against a teenage scout is uncalled for. And I agree. I mean, unbelievable. The senator office of Iowa is looking into it. He said it was an illegal search and intimidation of Americans returning to their own country. And here's the clincher. With hordes of illegal immigrants and stampeding across our southern border unimpeded, federal agents along our northern border detained and harassed a group of law-abiding American Boy Scouts. I'm not done. Another airline story, I'm sorry, but that's what's in the news. Another airline story. I just want to mention, 48 people were killed in a twin-engine turboprop plane that went down in Taiwan. It was delayed because of a typhoon condition. Why did they take off in typhoon conditions? Okay, that's not on column A. Okay, why was it flying? Okay, I know I'm incorrect, but still. The airline's president, I won't even say his name, appeared briefly at a news conference and bowed in front of the cameras and choked up. Yeah, he should be. I sincerely apologize. Yeah, you better apologize. Because you had your freaking plane take off in a typhoon. That's number one. And second is, if I was a passenger, I wouldn't get on it. It's the typhoon. I wouldn't even go to the airport. You know what I'm talking about? No, apparently not. I have one more airline story. And of course, that is the crash of Air Algerie in Mali. They said there were 116 people. Now, all of a sudden, there was 118. I don't know where those 2 people extra came from. It lost radar contact 50 minutes after the takeoff from Burkina Faso. And again, weather was blamed. The pilot asked for a change of heading due to the storms. AccuWeather says there were hardly any storms. It wasn't that bad. And planes do not go down in a rainstorm. They just don't. And the plane disintegrated. Why was it disintegrated? Remember last week I told you about McDonald's French fries? Mm-hmm. Well, what goes with the French fries? Hamburger. Well, McDonald's is standing by their troubled supplier in China who has tainted and expired meat that they are using. According to this, workers use their bare hands to process expired meat and even food that has fallen on the floor. I want to get a Big Mac right now. Do you? I feel really hungry with that. But McDonald's said they will continue to do business with the supplier.
I'd like to know your opinion on what's going on in Israel and Gaza. You haven't mentioned that.
I said Israel used the MH17 crash to... You know what? I'm glad you brought that up. And I think that you took my Gaza story out of here.
No, I did not.
Because you were trying to I don't know, do something in front of the camera, which I think that was very rude. But I was going to talk about Gaza.
I think that's very important.
It is, yes, and I'm going to make a statement, because I know I have readers in the Middle East, and especially in Israel and other countries. Stop it, people. It's a little strip of land. Who cares who owns it? Stop killing each other. It's wrong. I don't care what you think is right, what's wrong. Stop killing people and blowing up children.
That's it?
That's it.
All right, well, one thing I did want to mention in regards to that there were 50,000 Orthodox Jews who took over 10 blocks of New York in protest because now the Israeli army plans to draft devoutly religious men, and apparently they did not before.
No, they won't do that.
That's what they're claiming.
They won't do it.
Well, they're bringing out people in the hundreds of thousands, apparently, in Jerusalem and New York City in order to protest this possibility.
I'm glad you brought this up. May I just interject for a moment?
Absolutely.
Because how many times have we heard stories of Americans, Europeans being arrested at the airport because they're going to the Middle East to fight in Syria or someplace? Yes, this is terrible, yeah?
Yes.
So on CNN, they had a whole story about 750 Americans who are fighting for the Israeli army. Mm-hmm. How come that's okay?
Well, I think a lot of things are going on, obviously, that we don't know about.
Well, obviously. Go on.
Well, anyway, I think that's important. And the other thing I think that's important is because of all the things that are being shown on the internet right now have to do with children, as what you mentioned, being blown up, dying. There was a boy, speaking of airline crashes, He was going around the world with his father.
Oh, yeah.
They left Iowa, I believe, or Indiana. I think it was Indiana.
Indiana, right.
And when they left Hawaii, on the final leg of their journey, their plane crashed, and I believe the boy was 17.
17, he was 17.
17 years old. And so all over the world, they are showing children dying, being killed, crashes, all kinds of horrible things. A couple of reasons for this, which I want to bring to your attention. First of all, it has to do with the emotions and getting you tied into your animal mind. Second of all, what do children represent? They represent your new ideas, your new hopes, and your dreams. They're showing you that they are being killed off bit by bit and very consistently. They show them being kidnapped, killed, raped, blown apart. These are all your new ideas that are being destroyed in front of you, which therefore is creating, or supposed to create, a lack of hope for your future. So as you're watching these things, be sure you pass everything up, look at it objectively from the oversoul level, and begin to understand what is going on and the imprinting that they are trying to do to you and your animal mind. So be aware of this. So that's the first thing that I want to talk about.
Okay.
Next of all, now this was interesting to me because there was a picture on Huffington Post of a lizard in an astronaut, not diaper, but an astronaut suit. And the headline said, Photon M4 satellite is Russian, full of sex lizards and out of control. And it goes on about how the lizards are having sex with each other and it's out of control.
How could they be having sex if they weren't space uniform?
Well, but listen to this, it's interesting as far as imprinting, because it says that according to the Washington Post, the plan was to observe their mating patterns in zero gravity and how they are affected by the flight.
These little lizards and little tiny space
Geckos. And then it goes on to say that there were 4 male and 1 female lizard.
Ah, we know what that's about.
But it just doesn't make any sense. And then it says that just a few orbits, the satellite was out of control, not responding from commands. And then it goes on to say that the satellite also contains plants and insects in order to study their reaction to the odd physics of zero J.
Well, their reaction to watching lizards having sex in space.
So there's 4 male and 1 female lizards. See, that's the issue. The issue is that first of all, they say it's full of sex lizards. They're supposed to be observed, and it's only 5 geckos. But the imprinting, the big picture was the lizard or the reptilian in the spacesuit. That's my feeling.
I wonder if they have tail envy.
So you want to be sure and take a look at the imprinting
I'm gonna take a
as
look.
you're using your brown merger archetype. Then we have another river in the world turning blood red, this one in China. Now this has been going on for the last few years where we have the rivers around the world suddenly turning blood red. These have to do with some kind of rituals that they're
Well,
perpetuating.
they said there was maybe food dying from a factory.
No, they don't believe that. They said that they're not giving you an official reason, and they're talking about there are certain things that could be, but most likely not, especially because water pollution, it does happen in China, and it is not rare.
And we also know they have polluted meat they're giving to McDonald's.
So apparently the water was normal at 4 o'clock on Friday morning, but by 2 hours later it was blood red. So again, there's some kind of ritual that's going on in the planet. Now then we have, coming back a little closer to home, we have Obama,
we do
who's
have
urging
Obama.
Central American leaders for help. Apparently, they're going back again to the children, which has to do with the imprinting, that he wants to help slow the exodus of unaccompanied children from their countries. Now they're saying they're coming across in the tens of thousands.
That's nothing new.
But it's not been reported on in the news until the last few months. And they started out with like a trickle, and now from there we're up to tens of thousands. We're up to holding places. Now he's going to meet with the Central American leaders. Again, this is the show that they're putting on.
Yeah, but you know what it's about?
What?
Because they're called illegal aliens, and their children are little. So the imprinting is little aliens coming into the U.S.
Yes.
So that's a precursor to
Absolutely,
something
I
else.
agree with you. What was interesting is now they're saying that Obama wanted a $3.7 billion package. So lawmakers are calling for a $1 billion cut. And in that package, they're going to be talking about $225 million for the Iron Dome, which is a U.S.-funded Israeli military assault weapon. And then they're also applying for $615 million for wildfires. But listen to this. One lawmaker said it would be a terrible message to leave in August, this is for their annual August recess, without having done anything, knowing that it's going to create even more of a crisis on the border. Doing nothing, in my view, says Representative Charlie Dent, Republican, Pennsylvania, means that these children will be sent from the border back to communities like mine. Meaning that if they don't, they're going to take the children, they're going to spread them through the U.S. We talked about a holding facility even in Detroit. So what are they doing? They're bringing them up just like Russia, just like everywhere else. They're starting with the young people.
Rahm Emanuel, mayor of Chicago, said he will take 1,000 of these kids in Chicago.
Yes, and they can be used for a variety of things, from ritualistic purposes, to imprinting them. And remember, these are children now that will be not attached to anybody but the government that's taking care of them. They're not attached to their families, they don't have siblings, they don't have parents, so to speak, even though they claim they're going to try and reunite them. There's no way that's going to happen when you have tens of thousands pouring in now. So much so we have to ask for $2.7 billion from Congress. Obama's doing $3 billion. We're going to maybe get $2.7 billion to take care of these children. What about the children already in the U.S. that have a lot of issues, that don't have enough food, who don't have housing, who don't have schooling, all these kind of things. So there's a reason for what's going on. And then we hear about the Texas National Guard. Supposedly Governor Rick Perry of Texas announced plans to deploy 1,000 troops to the border to help deal with the illegal immigration crisis. Now, the National Guard in the past has never had the power to make arrests or to apprehend people in cases where the federal government authorizes their deployment. But because Perry did it, the governor of Texas, there are laws that will allow him to grant the National Guard these powers, which is making people nervous because the National Guard has never had those powers before. And again, all through the internet, we are seeing the police being villainized. You know, when I was growing up, it was the police officer. Police officers are your friends. If you have issues, find a police officer. Now they're pushing, they're shoving, they're killing people, supposedly accidentally, just
choking people to death.
All kinds of things which we never saw before. So the internet is being used again to tie you into fear and trauma and your animal mind. So keep in mind all these things as you're watching them. Now, speaking of children, I'm going to put this in here too. This I thought again was odd because it's a study. I always have to do these studies that say that children exposed to religion have difficulty distinguishing fact from fiction. And it goes on to talk about the miracles supposedly in the Bible and so forth. However, children these days are also brought up on such things as cartoons and fantasy books and movies. So it's not just the Bible, but all those things that are going on out there are making it difficult for children to tell the difference between fantasy and fiction. So therefore, we're not sure where that fine line is between physical and non-physical, all the kind of things that they're bringing you up to create more confusion with. And speaking of which, now I've been watching these stories about the botched executions that are going on in the U.S. I've been watching those and wondering, okay, why do they keep bringing it up? Because, if they want to kill somebody, they can kill somebody. I mean, they could look at you in the eye, touch you in the back, and you're dead. So
that's what used to threaten me with that.
That's right. So it's a good thing you're now under control. So, as I've been saying, however, or thinking as I've been reading all these stories, why are they doing all this? Well, here we go. We have an influential federal appeals court judge, Alex Kaczynski of the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeal, said, quote, that lethal injection was a dishonest attempt to disguise the brutal nature of capital punishment, which in its own sense is true. It's very brutal.
I just have a comment.
Go ahead.
These people who are being executed,
yes.
They murdered people.
Yes.
So where's the compassion?
Well,
why should we care how they're put to death when they brutally murdered people?
Well, the thing is, we're seeing more ways of people being brutally murdered on the internet and the television. Scenes that they never used to show, they are showing you now. So now they're showing you these poor people gasping for air or talking about it, whatever. Now he wants to bring in trained firing squads, claiming that these are foolproof ways to quickly execute an inmate and avoid complications. So in my opinion, it's trying to make, again, killing
I have a better idea.
more publicly acceptable.
Here's my idea.
What's your idea?
Because all these prisoners get a last meal.
Yeah.
Poison it. And they'll just die.
Yeah, they wouldn't know.
Period.
But the issue is, again, it's about bringing the killing, the murder, the rape, all this back into the public eye and making it, I'm sorry, more publicly acceptable. You get used to it, it imprints you. There's things that I see sometimes on the internet. I have to go to, when I'm in my bed at night, it starts replaying in front of my eyes, and I've got to do my mental work to get it out of my head.
Did you know that the U.S. is the only Western country that executes people?
No, that doesn't surprise
And
me.
they execute more people than China and Russia and North Korea and Cuba combined.
Yeah, except they do it, try to make it more palatable for
Yeah,
people.
and then those countries are accused of inhumane,
Right.
Right.
Now, there's lots of stuff going on that is totally out of control and totally off kilter. All right, now going on to another subject. The Earth scientists are saying are in the early days of a new mass extinction event.
That's not so bad.
Our last one had to do with dinosaurs. Now they're saying that we're seeing the loss of hundreds of species of animals and so forth, and then they go on to talk about how the ecosystem is changing, this is changing, that's changing. Again, and I'm going to tell you what this is leading up to.
What?
This is leading up to getting people to go off planet because they're talking about the only way to save humanity.
I'm going to go.
Is me too, first ship, but I want to know where I'm going though.
I don't care. It's better than here.
Can always be worse.
I don't care if there's molten oceans. That's better than
It
here.
can always be worse. You want to keep that in mind. So anyway, I think that that's what this is about. But so watch this story. And then we have a Wyoming cave with fossil secrets to be excavated. For the first time in more than 30 years, paleontologists are going to revisit one of North America's most remarkable troves of late Pleistocene fossils. The bones of tens of thousands of animals piled at least 30 feet deep at the bottom of a sinkhole-type cave. Apparently the U.S. Bureau of Land Management closed that off 30 years ago. Now they're going to open it up and they're going to study it. So you know what? Who knows what they're going to say now?
They have something they want to be discovered now.
Right. So they're bringing that up. Now the other thing that's been going around the internet, which I have seen recently, which I never saw before, is salamanders. In fact, I showed you not too long ago one that was posted, what was it, in Japan, about a 12-foot long salamander. It was huge. I didn't know they grew that big. Now, do you know why the interest is?
Well, because there's all radiation in Japan. It's like a Godzilla sound.
No, they're saying that's common there. But the interesting thing about the salamanders is that they regenerate limbs versus mammalians that do not regenerate. What they do is they scar.
Right.
So now there is interest. Apparently the University of Pennsylvania is interested in regenerating humans based on salamander genetics. So there's a Dr. Badalak who wants to reprogram bodies to regenerate using pigs. And he mentioned that they're already transplanting pig heart valves for a long time. See, in humanity. Now they're starting to use a pig's bladder, and they put that through a specific process, which I'll shorten it for you. It gives them an extracellular matrix, which is the glue that holds cells together, and all animals, including humans, have this extracellular matrix. So they take this matrix, they dry it, they shape it into strips, they powder it, and then from there it can redirect itself. Now it's interesting to me is it brought in the example of 2005, and of course when they tell us these things, most likely they've already happened, which we already know. In 2005, they said this man whose brother was involved in, and this man's brother of course is now dead, but he was involved in these experiments, sent him a gift of this powder. And this man had lost the tip of one of his fingers. And of course, he figured he'd never get it back. So back in 2005, this man put the powder, not knowing what it was, on his injured finger, and it regrew the entire fingertip, including the nail, in 4 weeks. And he said nothing like that had ever happened, and he didn't know what it was, but he trusted his brother. So who knows what they're really doing out there.
So they already have it.
So, yeah, of course. And of course, what you always tell everybody that pigs are, they're made with human genetics. So, of course, that makes sense. They can use that to regenerate. And they also mention in here that pig bladders regenerate, which that I did not know.
Well, that pisses me off.
It says that an organ can already regenerate the pig's bladder. Then we have in India. Now, India always has very odd things because of their reptilian genetics. They had a teenager.
No offense to Indian people.
They had 232 teeth removed. This one 17-year-old in a hospital in Mumbai. So they're thinking this is a world record, but again, they have a lot of reptilian genetics going on, and we see very strange cases there. They are oftentimes born with more arms, more legs, appendages, hair, this and that. So a lot of strange things happen in India. There is a zoo in the Philippines offering massages by pythons, huge pythons. And each python is fed 10 chickens before the massage.
So they don't eat the patient.
That's right. But again, here we have the reptilian frequency out there again.
But I have a question.
Yes.
They don't have hands, so how could they massage?
They just
Oh,
slither.
they just slither on you.
They slither all over. They're huge. I mean, these are like, I don't know, 15 feet long. They're huge. Then, now this was also interesting to me. There's claim that they're studying snake hearts to learn about human hearts.
Well, what have I always said about that? I said human hearts are based on reptilian genetics.
Now they say the snake heart only has 3 chambers,
Right.
while humans have 4.
Yes.
So why are they studying snake hearts unless we have some kind of reptilian genetics? Because this is the first time I've ever heard
No, I've told you that
That.
before. You just don't remember.
of them studying snake hearts.
No, but we have 3 main arteries, and we should really have 3 chambers instead of 4.
Yeah, that I've heard you say, but I've never heard you say before they studied snake hearts.
But that's proof of the mix of genetics.
Yes, and now they're actually telling us this. So that's why you have to know our material, read the news to understand what is really going on out there.
Here first, folks.
That's right. Now, did you know that if you're not happy with the size of your penis, you can get an olive oil injection?
Ooh.
Now,
And you could have salad with it.
there you go. So, anyway, I told you before that they're going to be bringing up the word penis and testicles and all
No,
those
you
things.
bring up those words every week.
Because, first of all, they started
No,
with
we're getting letters.
They started with the female genitalia. Now, I told you it would move on to the male, which it is. Now, according to this black market, olive oil injections are common in Thailand. But
That's
so
because they have such little penis.
are the complications. Apparently, hospitals in Thailand are receiving about 40 patients a month concerned about side effects. So if you're going to go to Thailand thinking you're going to get a larger penis through an olive oil injection, my suggestion is don't.
No.
And there was a man here, they were writing about who 5 years after the injection wound up with penis cancer, testicular cancer, and actually it spread into his abdomen, and basically everything had to be taken out. So be
That's
mindful of black market olive oil injections. So
Yeah,
never
so
heard of
I
such
should
things.
send mine back.
Now here's a man, a 56-year-old man, why
I
he
know
wanted
I don't want.
why
Mom, I'm not listening.
why he wanted a
No.
routine circumcision, I don't know at 56 years old, but apparently he was going through one, and when he woke up they had amputated his penis. Now the interesting things to me, it's a urology group, the hospital, a medical clinic, and 2 doctors as a defendants. It's like, how can you mistakenly take that off?
Really?
So I never do understand those things. The next word.
You can't put it back.
Can't put it back. It's what's done is done. Now, this is another word that I've told you I've been reading about.
What is it?
This is millennial.
Millennial?
I actually looked that one up because I saw that.
Oh, I know what that is.
What is it?
Those are people who are born in the new century.
What's the new century?
This one, the 21st century.
You sure it's the 21st century?
I think so.
Okay, these are people who were born between 1982 and early 2000. And the reason that I'm bringing that up is because millennial, again, to me, is a new word in the last few weeks, which they're acting like it was always been around. So keep in mind, what are they doing with that word? They have in New York City's Upper West Side received official approval from the city to have a separate side. Not only do they have people with really nice apartments, but they have something now that's dubbed the poor door. And that, again, it has to do with dividing the classes, which I've been talking about that for a long time too. In the U.S., we were known for having an upper class, a middle class, and a lower class. And they're working on getting rid of the middle class, so we're going to have an upper class and a lower class, and the lower class is going to be more easily manipulable.
Which class are we going to be in?
Well, maybe we'll be living on another world without classes by then. And my last story.
Oh, thank God.
Bugs. I know you love bugs.
Of course, I knew it was either bugs or poop.
Yeah, well, this one I put on, I'm not even going to tell you. Okay, I was going to say, check out the Facebook pages because there's some interesting things going on there. Anyway, bugs in your protein bar, and this is said, are edible insects the next food craze? I've been telling people about this for several years now. And it goes on and talks about a man who is, Salt Lake City, I guess. He has something called Chapool cricket bars, which is the first ever energy bar made from cricket flour. The bars each contain the equivalent of 25 crickets, claim to contain twice the protein of their competitors. Apparently they're competitors now. They are now in over 200 health food, bike, and extreme sports stores nationwide. The latest being, of course, in Colorado, Natural Grocers, a chain of 100 stores in the Midwest and West. Then there's Brooklyn-based Exo making protein bars, and Boston-based Six
With bugs.
Foods, yes,
Why don't they
planning
just
to
call them
sell
bug bars?
tortilla chips made from cricket flour, all things bugs in Athens, Georgia, and so forth. So anyway, again, they're talking again about the millennials. We're talking about humane ways to eat meat. And it says this is more than a blip, said Montana State University Associate Professor Florence V. Dunkel, who says that this is a thing of the future.
I don't trust anyone.
And it is a turning point, she says.
See, you've been eating bugs. Choking on those bugs. Well, people, I guess I'll have to wrap it up since she's a little indisposed right now. So, our August,
August is almost full.
hurry
They're
up,
coming.
gotta go. A couple of weeks, August intensive, October conference, September is Iceland and Poland. My Montauk movie's coming out.
Go on our Facebook page and like us, please, and
Like
invite
us.
your friends to.
She doesn't like me, but maybe you will. You know, what else?
Check it out.
Check it out, and
Oh, I know. Check out our Health and Partners page, because we've got some new things that are going to be going on there in the next week.
yeah, and maybe she will give you an olive oil injection if you come in August and October.
I don't
Okay?
think so, dear.
No?
No.
Just gonna rub it on there instead of.
No.
Oh, all right. She's no fun. We'll see you next time.
Bye.